The mist clung to the ancient cemetery like a shroud, weaving between weathered tombstones and forgotten names. Among them wandered a small figure, a boy no older than 10, his shoulders hunched against the autumn chill, clutching a wilted daisy. His eyes, red-rimmed yet determined, scanned each marker with desperate hope. "Excuse me, sir," he called to the gravedigger, voice trembling. "I'm looking for my mother's grave." The old man's spade paused mid-dig, his weathered face softening at the child's innocence. What the cemetery records would reveal about this boy's quest would change everything. Don't forget to subscribe for the next part of this heartbreaking mystery. The gravedigger, Harold Thorne, had spent 30 years tending to the dead. His calloused hands and stooped posture told the story of countless graves dug, countless farewells witnessed. At 62, he knew every inch of Oakwood Cemetery better than he knew the lines on his own face. The cemetery was his domain, his sanctuary, a place where the chaos of life settled into the orderly silence of death. But Harold carried his own burden. 5 years ago, his daughter had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a void that grew with each passing day. The authorities had eventually closed the case, but Harold never stopped searching, never stopped hoping. Each new grave he dug was a reminder of his failure to find her. All he wanted now was to tend to his cemetery in peace, to maintain this final resting place with the dignity it deserved. The cemetery records were his responsibility, a sacred trust between the living and the dead. "Your mother's name, son?" Harold asked, leaning his shovel against a nearby oak. "Emily. Emily Winters," the boy replied, his voice small but certain. Harold nodded, gesturing for the child to follow him to the small stone building that served as the cemetery office. Inside, dusty ledgers lined the walls, the written history of everyone who had ever been laid to rest in Oakwood. As they entered, Cemetery Director Vaughn was entertaining a group of potential investors, his voice booming with practiced charm. "Ah, Thorne," Vaughn said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We're discussing the new development plans. Perhaps you could come back later." "This young man is looking for his mother's grave," Harold explained. "It won't take but a moment." Vaughn's expression hardened. "I said later, Thorne. You know how important this expansion is. The boy's mother is dead and not going anywhere," Vaughn snapped, drawing uncomfortable laughter from the investors. "Unlike our funding, which will disappear if you continue to interrupt with your sentimentality." The boy shrank back, tears welling in his eyes as Vaughn continued, "Really, Thorne, this obsession with maintaining records for every pauper's grave is becoming a problem. Some people simply don't matter enough to remember." Harold felt the boy trembling beside him, humiliated by Vaughn's callous dismissal of his quest, and his mother. Harold's weathered hand found the boy's shoulder, steadying him against Vaughn's cruelty. "Come along, son," he whispered, guiding him toward the door. "We'll find your mother's records in my maintenance shed. I keep copies there." Vaughn stepped forward, blocking their path. "Thorne, you know cemetery policy. Official records stay in this building." His voice carried a warning edge as he addressed the investors. "You see what I'm dealing with? Old-timers who can't adapt to progress." The boy looked up at Harold, confusion and hurt mingling in his eyes. One of the investors, a woman in an expensive suit, checked her watch impatiently. "The boy can come back during public visiting hours," Vaughn continued, his smile tightening. "We're discussing a multi-million-dollar memorial garden that will replace this outdated section. Some of these plots haven't been visited in decades." "My mother's only been gone 3 months," the boy said quietly. "I visit every week." Vaughn's smile faltered momentarily before he regained his composure. "Well, isn't that touching? But rules are rules. Now, if you'll excuse us." 3 months. Harold interrupted, something clicking in his mind. "Emily Winters, you said?" The boy nodded earnestly. "There's been no Emily Winters buried here in the last year," Harold stated with absolute certainty. "I would know. I dug every grave." Vaughn's face darkened. "Thorne, you're embarrassing yourself. Your memory isn't what it used to be." He turned to the investors with an exaggerated eye roll. "This is exactly why we need digital records and younger staff." The boy's face crumpled. "But the man from the funeral home told me she was here. He showed me papers." Vaughn stepped closer, looming over the child. "Listen, kid, clearly there's been a mistake. Maybe you got the cemetery wrong. Maybe it's Westlawn or Pinecrest." His voice dropped to a hiss. "Or maybe your mother just left you, and this is some pathetic fantasy." The boy flinched as if struck. Tears spilled down his cheeks as he clutched his wilted daisy tighter. Harold felt a surge of protective anger. "That's enough, Vaughn." "No, Thorne, you've been enough of a problem." Vaughn grabbed Harold's arm, pulling him aside while maintaining his public smile. "You're fired. Clear out your shed by tomorrow. And take your little friend with you." The investors shifted uncomfortably, but none intervened. The woman with the expensive watch whispered something to her colleague, who nodded gravely. "You can't fire me," Harold said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Not without board approval. The board meeting was yesterday. Your termination was approved unanimously." Vaughn's smile was venomous. "Your obsession with your missing daughter has made you unstable. Always questioning, always digging into records that aren't your concern." The boy looked between them, tears still flowing but now mixed with confusion. "You've been falsifying records," Harold said suddenly, the pieces falling into place. "That's why you want me gone. That's why you're pushing this development so hard." Vaughn's face hardened. "Security will escort you out if necessary." Harold knelt beside the boy, his voice gentle but firm. "I promise we'll find your mother. I know every grave in this cemetery, every name in those books." He tapped his temple. "I've memorized them all, dates, locations, next of kin. If your mother is here, I'll find her. If she's not." His eyes narrowed at Vaughn. "Then we'll find out why someone told you she was." The boy wiped his tears, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes as he saw the certainty in the old gravedigger's face, the quiet confidence of a man who had spent decades honoring the dead by remembering their names, their stories, their final resting places. A man whose memory was far sharper than anyone suspected. From the shadows of a nearby mausoleum, a silver-haired woman emerged. Her tailored suit and authoritative presence silenced everyone as she approached. "Interesting accusations, Mr. Thorne," she said coolly. "As cemetery board chairwoman, I believe we need to revisit yesterday's meeting immediately." Harold Thorne had spent 43 years memorizing the dead. Not just their names and dates, but their stories, fragments gathered from grieving families, whispered confessions over fresh graves, and the silent testimony of the objects buried with them. His mind was a living archive more detailed than any ledger Vaughn had ever touched. As the cemetery board chairwoman approached, Harold recognized her immediately. Margaret Holloway, whose husband he'd buried 15 years ago. She'd visited every Sunday for 7 years, always with white roses and always with a story to share about the man she'd lost. "Mrs. Holloway," Harold acknowledged with a respectful nod. Vaughn's confident demeanor faltered slightly. "Madam Chairwoman, I wasn't expecting you until the groundbreaking ceremony next week." "Clearly," she replied, her gaze sweeping over the scene, the crying child, the defensive gravedigger, the uncomfortable investors. "I received a rather concerning call from our legal counsel this morning about irregularities in our burial records." Harold placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. "This young man is looking for his mother's grave, Emily Winters. According to him, she was buried here recently, but there's no record of it." "That's because it's a mistake," Vaughn interjected quickly. "The boy is confused." The boy looked up at Harold, his eyes pleading. "I'm not confused. The man in the suit gave my dad papers. He said Mom was here." Harold squeezed the boy's shoulder gently. "What was your mother's full name, son? And when did she pass?" "Emily Grace Winters," the boy said, his voice steadying. "She died 3 months ago. April 17th. Harold closed his eyes briefly, accessing the mental catalog he'd built over decades. "April 17th, he murmured. "We had 2 burials that day. Margaret Chen, plot 342, east section. And John Donahue, plot 118, north section." He opened his eyes. "No Emily Winters." Vaughn scoffed. "This proves nothing except that your memory is selective, Thorne. What funeral home handled your mother's arrangements?" Harold asked the boy, ignoring Vaughn. "Eternal Peace," the boy answered. The man had a gold pin with those words. Harold's eyes narrowed. "Eternal peace doesn't exist in this county. There's peaceful passages on Main Street and eternal rest in Millfield, but no eternal peace." Mrs. Holloway's expression sharpened. "Mr. Vaughn, I'd like to see the complete burial records for the past 6 months. Immediately." "Of course," Vaughn said smoothly. "They're in my office. Though I must say, this wild goose chase based on a child's confusion seems beneath the board's dignity." Harold stepped forward. "It's not just about the boy's mother. There are other discrepancies." He turned to Mrs. Holloway. Remember the Sanderson plot? Family of 4, purchased in 1987. According to the new digital records, it's now owned by someone named Whitaker. But I remember digging Mrs. Sanderson's grave myself just 3 years ago. Her husband visits every month with blue hydrangeas, her favorite. One of the investors shifted uncomfortably. What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Thorne? Harold looked directly at Vaughn. I'm suggesting that graves are being resold. That records are being altered. That families who purchased plots decades ago are being erased to make way for new, more profitable burials. That's absurd, Vaughn sputtered. And potentially slanderous. Is it? Harold countered. Then explain why the old record books from 1980 to 2000 went missing last month. Explain why families have been calling, confused about why they can't find their loved ones' graves anymore. Mrs. Holloway's voice cut through the tension. Mr. Vaughn, the records. Now. As Vaughn reluctantly led the group toward the administrative building, Harold knelt beside the boy. What's your name, son? Michael, the boy replied. Well, Michael, I need you to be brave a little longer. I think I know what happened to your mother's records, but I need to check something first. Inside Vaughn's immaculate office, Harold felt out of place with his soil-stained clothes and weathered hands. But as Vaughn pulled up the digital records on his computer, Harold's discomfort was overshadowed by certainty. Here, Vaughn said, turning the screen. Complete burial records for the past 6 months. No Emily Winters. Harold studied the screen, then pointed to a name. Jane Doe, buried April 18, plot 227, west section. An unclaimed body, Vaughn explained smoothly. The county handles several each year. Interesting, Harold said. Because I remember that burial. There was no body. The room fell silent. I dig every grave in this cemetery, Harold continued. Have for decades. On April 18th, I dug a grave in plot 227, but when the hearse arrived, there was no casket. Just paperwork. I was told it was a clerical error and to fill it back in. Mrs. Holloway's eyes narrowed. Mr. Vaughn. Vaughn's confident facade began to crack. This is ridiculous. You expect us to believe the ramblings of an old man over official records? I expect the truth, Mrs. Holloway said firmly. And I find it concerning that our head of operations seems dismissive of potential record falsification. Harold turned to Michael. Your mother's name was Emily Grace Winters, born September 3, 1985. Michael's eyes widened. How did you know her birthday? Because I remember her, Harold said softly. Not from burying her, but from when she came here 5 years ago to bury her father, George Winters. She wore a blue dress and carried a book of poetry. She told me her father had read those poems to her as a child. Tears welled in Michael's eyes. Grandpa's book. Mom still has it, had it. Harold nodded, then turned to Mrs. Holloway. Emily Winters isn't buried here because someone is using this cemetery for something else. They're creating false burial records for people who were never buried, and they're erasing records of plots that were legitimately purchased. For what purpose? One of the investors asked. Money, Harold said simply. Each plot in this cemetery sells for thousands. If you could resell plots that were purchased decades ago but not yet used, or create fictional burials to launder money through funeral expenses. Mrs. Holloway's expression hardened. Mr. Vaughn, step away from the computer. I'm calling the police and our forensic accountants. Vaughn's composure finally shattered. You can't prove anything. It's his word against mine, and he's just a gravedigger with a grudge. A gravedigger with a perfect memory, Mrs. Holloway corrected. And I suspect the families whose plots have been resold will have plenty to say as well. As security arrived to escort Vaughn from the premises, Mrs. Holloway approached Harold and Michael. Mr. Thorne, the board owes you an apology. Your termination is obviously rescinded. She knelt to Michael's level. And young man, we will help you find out what really happened to your mother. You have my word. Later, as the police took statements and the investors retreated in embarrassment, Harold sat with Michael on a bench beneath an old oak tree. Do you think my mom is still alive? Michael asked, hope and fear mingling in his voice. Harold chose his words carefully. I don't know, Michael. But I promise you this, we will find the truth. Some people think the dead are forgotten, that their stories fade away. But as long as there's someone to remember them, to speak their names, they're never truly gone. Michael nodded, clutching his wilted daisy. Thank you for remembering. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gravestones, Mrs. Holloway approached them again, this time with a small box in her hands. "Michael," she said gently, "I found this in Mr. Vaughn's desk. It has your name on it." Inside the box was a silver locket with a photograph of a smiling woman, Emily Winters, and an address written on a card. "It seems," Mrs. Holloway said, exchanging a meaningful glance with Harold, "that your journey isn't over yet." Harold looked at the address and felt a flicker of recognition. The pieces were starting to fit together, revealing a picture more complex, and perhaps more hopeful, than any of them had imagined. What do you think will happen next in Harold and Michael's journey? Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your theories about Emily Winters' true fate. The address led to an abandoned clinic with a padlocked door. As Harold jimmied the lock, Michael spotted a shadow moving inside. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, splintering the doorframe inches from their heads. Someone didn't want Emily's secrets found. Harold pulled Michael behind him, shielding the boy with his body as splinters from the doorframe rained down around them. His heart hammered against his ribs, the sound of the gunshot still reverberating in his ears. "Stay down," he whispered to Michael, whose eyes had gone wide with terror. They crouched behind a rusted dumpster, the abandoned clinic looming before them like a sentinel guarding its secrets. The building's windows were boarded up, paint peeling from its facade like dead skin. Whatever answers lay inside about Emily Winters, someone was willing to kill to keep them hidden. Harold's phone vibrated in his pocket. "Mrs. Holloway. We're in trouble," he whispered into the receiver. "Someone's inside with a gun." "The police are on their way," she replied, her voice tense. "Don't do anything foolish, Harold." But as he ended the call, Harold caught sight of Michael's face, determination cutting through fear, the same unwavering resolve that had brought the boy to the cemetery day after day. "We can't wait," Michael said, clutching the silver locket. "What if they destroy whatever's inside about my mom?" Harold knew the boy was right. The shooter would have heard the call. Evidence could be disappearing even now. "I have an idea," Harold said, scanning the perimeter of the clinic. "But it's risky." The abandoned clinic had once been a small community health center, with multiple entrances for different departments. While the front entrance was clearly guarded, Harold spotted a basement window around back that appeared less secure. "We need a distraction," he told Michael. "Something to draw attention away from that window." They gathered rocks and broken bottles from the alley. Harold positioned Michael safely behind a concrete barrier across the street. "When I give the signal, throw these at the front door, then hide. Don't come out until I come for you or the police arrive. Understand?" Michael nodded solemnly, clutching the makeshift projectiles. Harold circled around to the back of the building, keeping low. When he was in position, he texted Michael a single word, "Now." The crash of glass against the clinic's front door echoed through the abandoned lot. Harold heard shouting, followed by another gunshot. He winced, praying Michael had stayed hidden, then forced the rusted basement window open and slipped inside. The clinic's basement was a labyrinth of filing cabinets and storage rooms. Dust motes danced in the thin beams of light filtering through dirty windows. Harold moved silently, listening for footsteps above. He needed to find patient records, specifically, anything related to Emily Winters. A door at the top of the stairs opened, spilling light into the basement. Harold ducked behind a cabinet as heavy footsteps descended. "Check down here," a gruff voice ordered. The kid might have gotten in somehow. Two men entered the basement, flashlights sweeping across the darkness. Harold recognized one of them, a board member from the cemetery, one who had seemed particularly agitated during the confrontation with Vaughn. "We need to clear everything out," the man said. "Vaughn's been arrested. It's only a matter of time before they connect the dots." "What about the woman?" the other man asked. "She's being moved tonight. After that, she's no longer our problem." Harold's breath caught. She. Present tense. Could they be talking about Emily Winters? The men moved deeper into the basement, toward a room marked Archives. Harold followed at a distance, careful to stay in the shadows. Through the partially open door, he saw them pulling files and stuffing them into bags. "Grab everything from 2015 to present," the board member instructed. "Especially the experimental treatment records." Harold needed to see those files. More importantly, he needed to find out where they were keeping Emily, if she was indeed alive. But two armed men stood between him and those answers. The basement window shattered suddenly, drawing the men's attention. A rock lay among the broken glass. Michael had created another distraction. The men rushed toward the noise, giving Harold his chance. He slipped into the archives room and quickly scanned the labels on the remaining files. His fingers found a folder marked, Winters, E. Inside were medical records, consent forms with signatures that looked forged, and photographs of a woman who resembled the one in Michael's locket, but gaunt, sedated, barely recognizable. The final page contained an address, Street Catherine's long-term care facility. Harold photographed everything with his phone, then heard the men returning. He slid the folder back and concealed himself behind a large storage cabinet. Nothing there, one man reported. But we need to move now. Police could show up any minute. Finish packing these files, the board member ordered. I'll get the van. As footsteps retreated up the stairs, Harold formulated a plan. He needed to immobilize the remaining man, get out with the evidence, find Michael, and get to St. Catherine's before they moved Emily. Harold grabbed a length of pipe from a broken shelving unit. When the man bent to gather more files, Harold struck, a single blow to the back of the head. The man crumpled, unconscious but breathing. Harold quickly bound the man's hands with electrical cord, then grabbed the bags of files already packed. As he turned to leave, he heard sirens in the distance. Outside, he found Michael still hiding behind the concrete barrier. "Did you find something?" the boy asked, eyes bright with hope. "I think your mother might be alive," Harold said, showing Michael the photos. "But we need to hurry. They're planning to move her tonight." They reached Harold's truck just as police cars pulled up to the clinic. Mrs. Holloway emerged from one of them, rushing toward them. "Harold. Michael. Thank God you're safe." The police found. "No time," Harold interrupted, showing her the address. "Emily Winters may be alive at this facility. They're moving her tonight." Mrs. Holloway's expression hardened. "My car's faster than your truck. Let's go." St. Catherine's turned out to be a nondescript building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by high fences and security cameras. As they approached the gate, Harold realized they faced an impossible choice. "We can wait for the police with a warrant," Mrs. Holloway said, "but by then, Emily might be gone. Or we can find another way in," Harold suggested, eyeing the service entrance where a laundry truck was making a delivery. Michael clutched his mother's locket, his young face set with determination. "I've waited 3 years to find my mom. I'm not waiting anymore." Harold looked from the boy to the facility, knowing that whatever they decided next would change all their lives forever. The clock was ticking. Emily Winters was inside. And someone was preparing to make her disappear again. The laundry truck provided their way in. Harold distracted the driver while Mrs. Holloway and Michael slipped into the back, hiding among the linens. Once inside the facility's service area, they emerged cautiously, Mrs. Holloway's legal credentials helping them navigate past the first staff member who questioned their presence. "We need to split up," Harold whispered. "The records office will tell us where she is." Mrs. Holloway nodded. "I'll create a distraction at the front desk. Michael, stay with Harold." They moved through sterile corridors, the antiseptic smell making Michael's nose wrinkle. The boy clutched his locket tightly, knuckles white with determination. When they reached the records room, Harold found it locked. "Stand back," he muttered, using a credit card to jimmy the simple lock. Inside, he quickly accessed the computer while Michael kept watch. "Emily Winters. Room 317, East Wing," Harold whispered. "Restricted access." They hurried through the building, ducking into doorways whenever staff appeared. The East Wing required a keycard, but they followed a nurse through the door before it closed. Room 317 was at the end of a quiet hallway. Harold's hand trembled as he turned the handle. Inside, a thin woman sat in a chair facing the window, her back to them. Her once blonde hair had grown dull, her frame diminished by years of medication. "Mom." Michael's voice cracked. The woman turned slowly, her movements sluggish from sedatives. Her eyes, though clouded, widened at the sight of the boy. "Michael?" Her voice was barely audible, rusty from disuse. The boy rushed forward, throwing his arms around her. Emily's arms moved mechanically at first, then with growing urgency as recognition dawned. "My baby, how did you find me?" Before Michael could answer, the door burst open. Dr. Mercer stood there, flanked by 2 security guards and the board member from the clinic. "This patient is under court-ordered treatment," Mercer snapped. "You're trespassing." The court order was based on fraudulent documents, Harold countered, holding up his phone displaying the photos he'd taken. "Signatures forged, diagnoses fabricated." "Ridiculous," the board member scoffed. "This woman abandoned her child. She's mentally unstable." "I never abandoned him," Emily whispered, her voice strengthening. "They told me he died in the accident. They showed me a death certificate." Michael pulled out his locket, opening it to show his mother's picture. "I never stopped looking for you." The board member lunged forward, attempting to grab Harold's phone, but Mrs. Holloway appeared in the doorway with 2 police officers. "These are the documents proving patient abduction and insurance fraud," she announced, handing over a file. "And these gentlemen have a warrant." Dr. Mercer's face contorted with rage. "You don't understand what you're doing. Do you know who funds this facility? The connections we have? Your connections won't help you now," one officer said, producing handcuffs. "We've already arrested 3 of your associates at the clinic." As they led Mercer and the board member away, the doctor's composure finally broke. "It was all legal. The paperwork was perfect. We provided care for people nobody wanted. While billing their insurance companies for experimental treatments," Mrs. Holloway added coldly. Emily held Michael tightly, tears streaming down her face. 3 years, she whispered. "They took 3 years from us." Harold watched as mother and son reunited, feeling both triumph and sorrow. The justice they'd found was real but incomplete. No arrest could restore Emily's lost years or heal Michael's childhood trauma. The powerful men behind the scheme might escape through legal maneuvering, their wealth protecting them from the worst consequences. But watching Emily stroke her son's hair, her trembling hands growing steadier by the moment, Harold knew they'd won something precious. The truth had emerged from darkness. A family was whole again. And sometimes, that was justice enough. The autumn breeze rustled through the cemetery as Michael placed fresh flowers on his grandfather's grave. 6 months had passed since that fateful day at the hospital. Life had settled into a new rhythm, school during weekdays, weekends with his mother in her small apartment near the park. Emily was healing, slowly but surely. The tremors in her hands had subsided, and her eyes had regained their sparkle. She'd found work at a local bookstore, her knowledge of literature making her an instant asset. They were rebuilding, one day at a time. Harold had become a fixture in their lives, joining them for Sunday dinners and helping Michael with his history projects. The old gravedigger seemed lighter somehow, as if solving this mystery had lifted a burden he'd carried for decades. As Michael turned to leave, he noticed a small envelope tucked beneath one of the flower arrangements. His name was written on it in elegant, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a faded photograph of his grandfather as a young man, standing beside a woman Michael didn't recognize. On the back, 3 words, "Find her too." Michael slipped the photo into his pocket, questions already forming in his mind. His grandfather's past, it seemed, held more secrets than he'd imagined. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think Michael will discover next?